Today, I have the pleasure of hosting Abha Narain Lambah, a well known and celebrated restoration and conservation architect with an impressive body of work across India. Interestingly, her firm has also been advising on infrastructure and planning of cities from a heritage conservation perspective, which, in my mind, is a much needed critical lens for our larger urban context. She will be sharing with us her journey and involvement on the Jaipur Metro project, which began as an impact study on the surrounding heritage structures and led to a discovery of a 100-year-old civic water system that garnered interesting responses as the project evolved. Personally, I'm curious to discuss with Abha the role that she believes conservation can play in preserving the past and shaping the future of our cities and its heritage. I'm gonna jump right into the project, and I'm gonna ask you, how did this project come about? Because typically, if I were to, or whatever little bit I know about your practice, it's sort of rooted in conservation architecture. It's rooted in museums or refreshing, renewing sort of old buildings. And here we are on Jaipur Metro, which in most minds is sort of this large undertaking at the city level. So please.
Here we were talking of an underground metro project that was supposed to be tunneling right under the walled city of Jaipur. And this is in a desert region. So you were anticipating sand beneath, masonry structures that were very historic. The entire Jaipur walled city is now a World Heritage Site. You had historic monuments like Jantar Mantar, another World Heritage Site, Isar Kilat, Hawa Mahal. And under those very fragile masonry structures, you were going to be tunneling underneath them and causing crazy vibrations. And that project is funded by Asian Development Bank. And as a funder, they insisted that there be an audit. So my firm came in for an audit of what's the implication of that tunnel boring machine going under the Jaipur wall city would have on the structures and all the historic fabric. So along with a fantastic team of structural engineers, SMA, we came in, we did a study of each and every building along the main streets. And we actually came up with a pre-intervention assessment. So we knew that there were some vulnerabilities in the historic fabric. Some buildings were going to fall regardless because, the shopkeepers had dug basements, extended, sort of burrowed into the old building to get a little more space. There were some buildings which had added floors without proper, due structural strengthening. So we first identified just the buildings that were vulnerable because of other reasons. Then we identified the buildings that could be vulnerable because of any vibration from the metro. And we came up with a very intensely calibrated system that I'm really proud of, that would meet any international standard, where there was a system of crack monitoring, which was all integrated down the whole streetscape of Jaipur's bazaars. So from Chandpol Gate to Surajpol Gate, when the tunnel boring machine began, we were monitoring even a vibration of 1 millimeter. And any vibration of beyond 1 millimeter would have set off alarms right through the Jaipur Metro chain of command to the Chief Minister's office. So that was the level of scientific investigation we brought to the table. And then something remarkable happened. And I think all projects, there's always something that you don't anticipate, and sometimes it can elevate the quality of a project beyond your own comprehension. And that is when we were looking at, within Jaipur, where do you plant a metro station when every building is a haveli or a monument that is bang on the street? There are no setbacks. You have an arcade of shops that line the roads. So obviously, the only way for the metro line to run was under the road. That's the only open space. And then the metro stations were positioned at the two chowks, which is Badi Chopper and Choti Chopper. So when we began researching and doing an archival research on these two areas, we were dumbfounded because we found photographs from 1870s, which actually showed, instead of a roundabout and a road, which we'd seen Jaipur's Choti Chopper being for decades, in these photographs, we saw what seemed to be like a step well or a kund right at the center of this urban chalk or a roundabout. And the chalk was like any roundabout you see in any city in India. It was tarred, it had a roundabout, it had a blue color water tank that was never filled with water, and it had a, like a concrete railing, and it's the standard sort of chalk that you see in any town or city in India. Then when we saw these photographs, we sought a meeting with the then Chief Minister, Vasundhara Raje, and I presented the photograph to her and I said, ma'am, if this photograph is, which is obviously authentic, but if we have to understand the fact that there was, in place of a roundabout, there was a step well, there might be a possibility that when we come with our tunnel boring machine at that point at Choti Chopper, we might be actually tunneling right through a step well. So we have two choices here. We either say, it's time bound, it's a government project, it just tunnels right through and give it, don't look at it, which has, to be honest, has happened earlier across cities in metro projects. But I said, ma'am, there's one chance that we might be able to find the old stepwell. And it means redesigning the station levels, redesigning the entire metro line to ensure that we roughly need about 6 meters from the ground level to be able to anticipate the depth of the stepwell. So which means I've got to sink my existing station down by 6 meters, but take a chance. And I was completely, spellbound when the Chief Minister of a state says, we will accept a redesign, but go save the kund. And that was amazing. We went right back to the drafting table. We redesigned the whole thing. We then conducted an archaeological excavation in the middle of a metro site, and that was unheard of. So we had the metro works had already barricaded the site, and then we brought in our archaeologists, and with brushes, we were removing layer by layer of different layers of stones. We went down and we found the stepwells intact because they'd just been filled up with debris at some point. And the beauty was that these were water reservoirs in a dry desert state during the time of the Jaipur royals, during the Maharaja of Jaipur's time. And actually, these were the watering holes for the city. So in the 1700s, when there was no other source of piped water supply, water would be brought from far away from the mountains through a very traditional medieval system called the Kanat. So you had underground subterranean aqueducts that brought water from the faraway mountain reservoirs and lakes into the center of the city. And then they fed the tank through beautiful marble gaumukhs. So the water spouted through the marble gaumukhs, and we found all the marble gaumukhs intact. So each marble gaumukh was documented, recorded, very carefully taken away and placed at the Jaipur Albert Hall Museum for safekeeping and custody. And then we got on to going further down. We've excavated a second layer of stepwells in Badi Chopper, and we found a central fountain that was a beautiful stucco fountain. We only found the base, so that's all we could recreate. After that, every stone was numbered and taken away to the yard. And then when the construction of the Jaipur metro station was complete, we brought the stones back, relayed and did an anastylosis of the kund and brought it back.
I know this was an incremental project, right? Because it started unraveling, and then when it unraveled, you started building on those things. But what would you characterize as the big moves? If it was an elevator pitch now, looking back, to the chief minister saying, well, this is what I'm going to do on the project?
Actually, the big moves and the pitch was really not to the chief minister as much as to the people of Jaipur. The time that the Jaipur metro construction, the project started, and just when, how a metro starts is through a tunnel boring machine. Now, how do you get a tunnel coming into a walled city with stone bastions and gateways? You do it by first digging a pit just outside the main gate. It's almost like a siege and one of those old war movies or books that you read of. And you dig a huge pit and you place the tunnel boring machine inside that pit. And then gradually, like a mole, it keeps tunneling and then goes under the gateway, under the Chandpol gateway, and then enters the road system to go under the streets of the city. The thing was, the minute the tunnel boring machine reached the pit outside Chandpol gate, there was absolute fear, and there was such intense rumors across the walled city and the residents of Jaipur that now all the buildings will start crumbling down. And there were two newspapers, local newspapers in Hindi and English, which carried a consistent campaign saying all the historic buildings are going to crumble to dust, because the Jaipur metro is going to make sure that as the tunnel boring machine moves, every building on either side will start crumbling. And that's a very pertinent fear, because most of these buildings don't have very deep foundations. They are built on sand. It's not like, let's say, a Bombay metro where you're encountering like solid Deccan trap igneous hard rock. Here, this was all on sand. And there was such fear and almost paranoia in Jaipur that it began really with first making a pitch to the citizens of the walled city to be able to convince them that we were not going to have their buildings fall apart. And that is why my entire team of conservation architects and engineers, I think our pitch was really to the citizens. So we would literally go from door to door, talking to various shopkeepers, trying to convince them and assure them that nothing was going to go wrong. So we really started with making the pitch not just to one client or two clients, but the hundreds of thousands of residents of the walled city. And I've had so many chas and chai and pakoras sitting with people in the walled city. And then finally, we made a little video. I think that's the thing with public projects. Public projects, you have to treat your public like your client.
Was there any collateral damage? Were there any mishaps along the way? Were there any mistakes?
Sometimes you do a project and then you get criticism. In our case, we got all the criticism before we started the project. So we were trammed in the local press already before we started the project. And because we had so much criticism that we had to anticipate, we were maybe a little extra careful about that. And I'm just sort of so relieved and so happy that we did not have any untoward incident. And the funny thing is that the day, we had within our internal team, we had our schedule of the movement of the tunnel boring machine. And we all had sort of, we were all sort of on tenterhooks the day it was going to cross under the Chandpol gate, because that was the biggest, like huge gate that a minor shift could have brought it crumbling down. And we all couldn't sleep that night. But when it went through, there was like sort of this on WhatsApp group celebrations across our team with the Jaipur Metro. And the funny thing is, a week after that, there was a news item in the press saying, now the boring machine is going to go through the gate and it's going to collapse. And we were like, it's already happened.
But kudos to obviously the teams that everything was done properly. And I hope that you all went back to the city of Jaipur and said, look, I hope you guys are happy. Thank you for supporting us and all the good stuff, right?
Well, what happened was this project spun off a second project. So
right.
When we actually a third as well, when we made our metro line and we recreated the new station, we figured that there was, when you alight from the metro, you finally have to go up through your escalators and lift onto the road level. But another way could be if you could actually come through that old kanat into the kund itself. And that gap was an area of about 25,000 square foot, which we felt was perfect for a little museum of Jaipur. And so underground, a subterranean museum was created around the Choti Chopper. And what we did was we brought in all the, it turned into an archaeological museum because this was an archaeological exercise. But then we realized that all this also happens that in the daytime, in a desert city, it's hot, it's dry, it's difficult for people to be walking around. And how about extending the the tourism experience as well as the shopping experience of the walled city through the night when it gets cooler and when it's actually less congested and it's easier to walk through. And by doing that, you are also extending the business hours and in a way increasing the economic opportunities for the local shopkeepers and the craftsmen. So this then spun off into a third project, which was the Jaipur Illumination Project. And with that, we took through funds from the central government. We brought in the illumination of the streets. So all the bazaars of Chauda Rasta, of Tripolia Bazaar, of Nai Sadak, of Jodi Bazaar, we lit those up at night. So all the Havelis, all the historic buildings were lit up so as to for people to be able to not only easy pedestrian access, but also to create a kind of an evening opportunity to both enjoy the buildings and give value to the shopkeepers of the area.
I think the critical thing here, you nailed it, right? Your client is the city. Imagine that as a client base. I want to know if gender has played a role in how you've made your choices in either setting up your practice, in either facing prejudices, in either having advantages in India, or any such thing that you could openly share with us.
From the time that I was at the School of Planning and Architecture in Delhi, and the ratio was really skewed. There were hardly any, women. Today, it's good to see more than 50% women students in architecture colleges. At our time, the boys at SPA would demand, the social evenings and dance parties with Miranda House and other girls' colleges because they said there weren't enough girls in the college. But see, on a serious note, in my entire career, I don't think at any point I have either felt discriminated against because I was a woman, and at no point have I wanted to use my being a woman as an excuse not to face facts. So I think it works both ways. A lot of women feel that they're disadvantaged, and I'm sure, there are reasons why. There's a whole societal construct towards that. But at least I can say that personally for myself. I feel really, privileged that in my career, my entire career, I don't think at any point I have felt that because I was a woman, I was treated badly or I lost a project. But there's also a large it's a large dropout rate of women architects who study architecture and then give it up. And that is something that pains me because I feel that, you've invested, and a lot of people, a lot of institutions, very often, in government colleges like at SPA, our fees and monthly fees used to be 18 rupees a month. So
right.
It's your country is invested in you. You got into one of the, top institutions. There's a lot of investment. And I think it's incumbent upon us as women architects, if we've gone through it's a ringer of 5 years. 5 years of architecture is it challenges every cell in your body. It's such a tough profession. And when you go through that ringer and you clear 5 years or sometimes 7 years to get your architecture degree, don't let it go to waste. Just hang in there. You need time out to have babies. I've carried my daughter to my sites from the time she was like virtually a toddler. Just don't give up. And that's what I would like to say to every woman out there.